Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new ProRevenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
Welcome to r/ProRevenge. The first one is titled, Make Me Quit the Day Before My Birthday? Have fun getting fired. Quick background, from 2009 to 2012 I worked at a local quick lube chain. Oil changes in under 20 minutes only using a trusted oil brand etc. Going into this job I assumed that's all I'd be doing. Quick oil changes and the occasional tire rotation. I was wrong. Working for this specific chain it's all about the extra services and products to bang customers over the head for that they might actually need but not for double the price of the local auto parts store. Maintaining a higher average sale every month was very important for keeping your job. And just for reference, the district managers wanted all service techs to at least have a $60 plus average every month. A basic oil change was $35. On average we would do anywhere from 20 to 50 cars a day depending on the day of the week in a 3-bay garage. It's also worth noting that if you maintained a high monthly sales average consistently, you were considered better than everyone else and put at the front of the line for promotions. It was also very common for someone with a high average to go from a tech to being a manager of their own store within a year. Yes, there was a high turnover rate. And yes, it was most certainly due to management consistently hiring drug addicts and not running background checks on people. Now starts my story. Over the course of my employment I worked my way up to being a shift supervisor. This was one position below assistant manager, but I still held keys to the shop and had the alarm system's code. I opened and closed the shop regularly, and if I wasn't too busy with college I could have been an assistant manager anytime I wanted. Managers I worked with loved me and the district manager as well. It was honestly a fun job. Made a lot of friends working there that I still am friends with to this day. But then we got a new manager we'll call Johnny. Johnny was a dick. Younger guy, 25 at the time, thought he was hot crap cause he held an $80 plus sales average consistently since he started. Some people considered him a blessing because he helped other techs get their averages up too. Turns out he only helped them to make himself look better for raises and promotions. Here's a quick list of things Johnny did once he took over my store. Consistently disappeared while working for hours at a time to go walk around talking to the local college girls. Left every Saturday, the shop's busiest day, 3 to 5 hours early and would have someone else clock him out at the end of the day. I soon discovered he lived in the next town over from me and knew people that knew him. Johnny? A manager? Last time I saw him he was so cocked up he punched himself in the face till he bled. He dropped out of high school and ended up living in the park for a while. How'd he get the job with no diploma? He was bipolar, so screaming matches and temper tantrums became a regularity. We had an employee that I believe had some form of autism and Johnny would make him do dumb stuff cause he thought it was funny. He dumped a mop bucket filled with dirty water on the shop's floor as soon as I finished mopping it at the end of the day because I pissed him off somehow. He got people that he didn't like fired by making fake schedules, showing they were off for 3 days straight when they were actually on the schedule to work. And when the employee didn't show up for the shifts he would write them up in secret for a no-call no-show for each day. But didn't tell the employee until they came in for their supposed shift and would fire them on the spot. If you want to argue, call corporate. And now my favorite thing he did often that I walked in on him doing. Remember how I said he held a $80 plus average? Well, he did that by ripping off elderly customers by lying to them about their cars. Selling them services that either weren't actually getting done or weren't even needed. And selling parts weren't even parts the car had that could even be replaced or just wouldn't be getting replaced. I discovered his little scam by getting stuck closing the shop so he could go home a few hours early. I decided to use the time to go through the day's invoices and finding 2 huge sales on cars that I worked on. Only problem was that I didn't do any of the services on either of those cars. Hell, one of the invoices said the transfer case and rear differential were serviced. Those don't exist on 2011 Honda Civics. I then started watching the customers he would ring up and write down notes like the car, time, and customer. At the end of the day I'd find those invoices and get the internal numbers. At the time I didn't think I'd ever use these notes, but 100% thought they would be useful. And it certainly was useful the day before my birthday. I requested my birthday off 2 months in advance by submitting a formal request form. I handed it to the assistant manager who just started learning how to make the schedule and left a copy on Johnny's desk. The day before my birthday, Johnny and the assistant manager were looking over the schedule in front of everyone to see who was working the next day. When he discovered I was off, he asked why. To which the AM replied, "Well, yeah, he requested it a while ago, didn't you see the form?" Johnny replies with, "Yeah, I did, duck that. Request denied, you're working tomorrow. Got a problem with it, turn in your keys now, because if you don't show up you're fired." I promptly changed into my street clothes, took the key off my key ring, handed it to Johnny, and left. He called me back a few hours later begging me to come back, but I would still have to work on my birthday. I laughed for a few seconds and hung up. Now it's time for the revenge. I got in contact with someone in the corporate office a few hours away, explained the situation that had occurred in the morning, and gave a few examples of what Johnny was doing wrong at the store. They asked if I could email them everything I had and promised they would look into it. The DM gave me a call asking if I wanted to work at a different store, but I turned it down, deciding it's time for me to move on. The job made me hate cars and people, so it was time to move on. I didn't hear anything about it for a while, till the guy who is now my best friend calls me laughing hysterically with news about Johnny. Apparently Johnny had been begging for a raise or a promotion to start training people to become managers so he would be out of the stores and customer service completely. One day he got a call from the corporate office to discuss this. He was beyond elated and told everyone who would listen. Turns out that was a lie. They had him drive 3 hours away to sit him down to review footage of the things he's been doing, going over those bogus invoices, and listen to voicemails of customers calling and complaining about getting ripped off. He was immediately fired. Found out he ended up never finding work in the state again and actually ended up moving a few states away. Myself, I ended up in a different industry working for the state, making way more money with a ton of benefits. Unless Johnny hit the lotto, the winner is me. The next one is titled, "Don't Ignore My Dad." My dad was a great guy. Pretty laid back but sharp-witted with professional level ball-buster skills. He took everything in stride until you crossed him. This is a tale about one of the poor souls who did. My dad lived across the street from a guy who worked in the same mill as Dad. So he would give Dad a ride to and from work and come over when there was nothing else going on. Just to hang out. Drank Dad's beer, ate Dad's snacks, what have you. Anyway, Dad quite loudly questioned a company policy that disregarded a state holiday and they canned him. Dad was annoyed but figured that's how things work sometimes and took the unemployment comp happily. He went and informed the guy that he wouldn't need a ride that afternoon because he had been sacked. The guy made a weird face and said that was fine. Dad made a mental note of the weird look and went home to start his vacation. Anyway, Dad had been outside playing with my nephew when the guy got home. Dad gave him a friendly wave. It was not returned. In fact, the guy didn't even look in his direction. Dad figured maybe something else had happened at work that day that was distracting and blew it off as nothing. But the next day he didn't wave again. Just locked his car up and hurried into his house like he wasn't even there. So the day after that, Dad called to him and was once again ignored. Dad was starting to get pretty miffed at this point. Why was this guy being such an idiot now? Because they didn't work at the same place anymore? That's dumb as hell. After a few days of this, Dad actually went up to his car and tried to talk to him, but alas, he was still ignoring him. With the numerous blow-offs wearing on his mind, Dad came up with his revenge. You see, Dad was a drinker. Not a violent, mean drinker, but a daily beer-drinking guy. And so was the guy across the street. So much so that he always had a few beers on the way to work. At 7 in the morning while driving. Dad never said anything because he grew up during a time when you could drink a bottle of whiskey while driving and the only thing someone would say to you was to not throw it out the window. But he was definitely going to say something now. About an hour before the guy left for work, Dad called the non-emergency police line. He told them that there would be someone leaving their house at 5 of 7 not only with a buzz on but with a beer in their lap while driving. He told them where he was leaving from and what direction he was going in. The dispatcher asked him if he was serious and Dad said, and I quote, "like ducking cancer." At 10 to 7, Dad sat at the kitchen table and waited to see if anything would come of his little tip. He saw the guy come out of his house with a few beers, right on time. He heard the car start up, saw him pull out of his parking space, and then heard a siren whoop twice. Dad smiled and went out on the front stoop to watch the show. And it was a pretty good one, too. Apparently, the guy had been busted for DUI a few times, so he was instantly arrested, the car was impounded, and he never saw the guy again. One time, when he was recounting the story to my sister's friend, I laughed and said, "Dad, you're a snitch." He looked over at me, shrugged and said, he should have just said, "Hi." The next one is titled, Steal Grandpa's Money? You get stinky car. Grandpa was blind but lived in a senior community. They had Agnes come in and clean for him. We get a call from his housekeeper that he had died. She called us after she had him cremated. We were upset. We went to his place. All our information and photos were gone. She had taken the sheets, the pillows, pots and pans, anything that wasn't nailed down. Grandpa had money stashed in the place. Only my dad and Grandpa knew where he hid it. It was gone. He was my dad's grandpa, but we called him Grandpa. My dad found out that Agnes had come into some money. She bought a newer car for cash and a vacation. The car she bought was something she always wanted. My dad is Italian and non-violent revenge is in his blood. He waits for her to go on vacation. The idiot left her car door unlocked. He shoved dead fish, rotten tomatoes, and rotten eggs under any place he could find. Oh, and it was a very hot summer day. She came back 10 days later. She couldn't get rid of the smell. She couldn't sell it and she couldn't stand the smell to drive it. This was in the 70s. Agnes told the county he didn't have any relatives. The management company had nearest relative wrong. We lived 2 hours away. We did go to the police, there was no way to prove he had the money. Yes, there are a lot more things he could have done, but that's what he chose. It is a true story. The next one is titled, You Break My Cell Phone, I Break Your Everything. Happened several years ago. I lived with 3 people sophomore year in college. One guy never left his room, I literally saw him like 5 times. The other guy, let's go with Ted, was kind of dick but very non-confrontational and would just leave whenever shit hit fans. The girl, who we will call Looney, was a total ducking idiot. Like raging music late into the night, total ducking slob and mean as crap. Example, she told one of my friends, who was bi, and not fully out, that a real man wouldn't be watching Project Runway, so why are you in our apartment anyways? Mostly, she was irritating and messy, but one night she crossed the line. I had gone out with friends but about 1 hour into the night realized I'd left my cell phone at home. I excused myself from my friends and headed down the hill to the apartment. We lived on the 4th floor. When I got into the courtyard, I heard Looney yell, "Hey idiot, catch this," and look up to see something silver flying at me. I actually hit the deck not knowing what it was and hear a crash as my cell phone shatters on the asphalt. I don't know if I have ever been madder in my life. Rather than start screaming in the courtyard, I silently go upstairs where Ted is making drinks. Classy folks that we are, he's making Hawaiian punch and vodka. I asked him if he knew Looney was in my room with my cell, where she wasn't allowed, and he goes, "Yeah, but I didn't want her to get mad at me, so I didn't say anything." I decide I've had enough of both of them. I tell him I'll get the drinks, I worked as a bartender, so I usually was in charge of drinks. He smiles and walks out of the kitchen. I put the vodka back in the freezer and get the Everclear. A lot of Everclear. Happily, Hawaiian punch and handful of sugar mixed in hides that fairly well. I go upstairs where Looney is sitting on my bed. She's had a little to drink, but not enough. I had her one of the drinks and Ted gets the other. I explain I'm not drinking as I came home due to an upset stomach and hey, I was planning on dumping that flip phone anyways for a sweet razor, so no worries. Looney grins and downs the drink. I offer to go get another and she hands me the cup. Ted is working through slower but he's a lightweight so I'm not worried. Looney downs another drink in quick succession and then I settle in and wait until I'm satisfied that both of them are in blackout mode. I start handing them all of their expensive crap, we are talking laptops, TVs, cell phones, external hard drives, etc., and tell them how cool it would be to throw them out the window and watch them blow up like my cell phone. I also tell them it's my stuff so they don't have to worry about it, because I don't care if they throw my stuff out as long as they don't touch the gerbil. I'll hand them all the right, aka only their crap, to make sure no one gets too excited and hurts the gerbil. Everybody likes the gerbil, so this sentence is received with solemn nods. They begin enthusiastically throwing all of their expensive electronics out the window. The entire apartment complex is watching them throw shit into the courtyard. We attract a small crowd of students walking past the complex who stop to watch. When they run out of stuff, I help both of them get to bed over the course of another hour or so of talking them into sleeping it off. They both pass out. I quietly leave the apartment complex. I meet up with my friends again and tell them I need to stay somewhere for the night. Someone volunteers a couch. The next morning, I return around 10 AM where my apartment is in full-out panic mode. Looney is screaming her face off and tells me she is going to destroy me. When she sees me in the courtyard, she is still upstairs in the apartment. Ted is in the courtyard crying openly. Okay, I felt a little bad about Ted at this point. As I go to open the door to my apartment, Looney bodyslams me up against the opposite wall, screaming that she's going to destroy me for ruining all of her crap. Guy in the apartment across the hall opens up his door and shoves me behind him, telling Looney, "You crazy idiot. You and Ted got drunk off your asses last night and threw all your own shit out the window. Silver Elf didn't have anything to do with it. She wasn't even here, she just got home. Last night she left with her friends to go to dinner way before that crap happened." Looney's jaw drops open. But it all went out her window. It had to be her. She was definitely here. Neighbor shakes his head. Dude. The entire apartment complex saw you doing it. Silver Elf stayed out last night. You're a ducking alcoholic. She starts to cry and goes downstairs to continue sorting through the wreckage. My cell phone is located and I get upset, telling both of them they are going to have to pay to replace it. By now, several other neighbors have confirmed to them that they in fact threw everything out the window and that I was not home last night. They are both sobbing as they agree to buy me a new cell phone. Don't feel too bad, Mommy and Daddy paid for all their things to be replaced. But they both had to rewrite some term papers that were lost. They were both notorious after that for being some of the dumbest people on campus, the story of what they did having spread like wildfire. The next one is titled, "Fire the IT Guy a Week Before My Wedding?" Good luck without me. I worked for a small ISP, think 2 owners and 6 employees, in a college town years ago. This was before Wi-Fi was really much of a thing. But it wasn't a big deal because a lot of the apartment complexes we had contracts with had been wired, at our expense, with CAT5 Ethernet into each apartment. In some complexes where we hadn't deployed wiring to each unit, we tried to offer wireless service using original Cisco 802.118b access points. I had previously worked at a call center doing Win9X tech support with Convergys on a contract with Microsoft, and during high school I had also been the network administrator for a small non-profit run by a friend of the family. I was hired to do phone tech support for the ISP based on my background. But when it was slow or they needed an extra pair of hands, I was often co-opted into going out on service calls into the apartments of the students that were our customers. Or into manual labor types of projects at the office like making Ethernet patch cables. I also worked most weeknights in an on-call basis in which support calls would be routed to my personal cell phone. But I only received a token amount of compensation since I wasn't working 100% of the hours that I was on call. But hey, it was a bit of extra income above the 40 hours at $9 per hour I was getting paid. One Friday I was using my lunch break to make some calls at my desk regarding a car accident I was in, and sorting things out with insurance, etc. 2 of my co-workers were in the same area I was and we had all been making patch cables all day long. On Monday, one of the owners asked me into his office immediately after I arrived and informed me that I was being fired. This butthole knew I was getting married the following week, and took the opportunity to cut me loose before I could take advantage of any PTO for the wedding and my honeymoon. When I pressed him as to why he had made this decision, he indicated that the other owner saw me making phone calls and surfing the internet whilst my 2 other co-workers were making patch cables. I informed him that I was taking my lunch break by eating at my desk, and making phone calls on my personal cell phone, so I wouldn't use company equipment for non-work purposes. He didn't care, and gave me the boot anyway. One of the complexes we serviced was notorious for a very high incidence of Wi-Fi outages, as a significant portion of the units in it had not been wired yet. I was aware that my employer was in hot water with the complex management company for all the complaints coming from student tenants regarding the lack of reliability of their only option for broadband internet. I had been out to do a number of on-site service requests at this particular complex and I was very familiar with its network architecture and equipment locations. I remained friends with my former co-workers, and for weeks after my termination they continued to lament having to take support calls during the day. They were hired for blue-collar labor primarily. They also told me about all the angry customers leaving voicemails almost every night after hours while no one had replaced me to take after-hours support calls. The two owners had the calls routed to their cell phones, but mainly ignored the calls or turned their phones off each evening. Maybe you can see where this is heading. At around 1 a.m. one night a few weeks after my termination, I drove into the parking garage section of our notoriously complainy complex, with 800+ residents. Ensured there were no security cameras and no one watching. Then quickly entered each of the unlocked equipment closets and unplugged both ends of every single one of the patch cables and replugged some of them back in random ways and left the rest on the floor. I then quickly and quietly exited the closets. But before I left I turned off the electrical power breakers in each closet, and installed padlocks that I threw away the keys for, where they were previously missing on each access door. Every time I think back on what must have happened after, it brings a smile to my face. I feel bad for the students that lost their internet access for a night. But I take comfort knowing that the owners of the company likely got dozens and dozens of calls, or woke up to dozens and dozens of angry voicemails. And while they were phone system knowledgeable, none of the cables, patch panels or switches in our complexes were ever labeled, let alone documented anywhere. They had to fix that crap all by themselves. Thanks for listening.